This was supposed to be a lovely story about the history of Kentucky bourbon country, but since I didn't know that this drinkable lighter fluid was like 800 proof, I ended up borderline tanked after my first tasting and unable, for DWI reasons, to go more than one distillery. So since at this point I need a nap, maybe a meeting, and possibly a sponsor, let's just stick to a sip of bourbon history at Maker's Mark. We start bright and early, before my blood alcohol level that day became criminal. It's a very early start this morning. I just got finished on the treadmill at Anytime Fitness out here in middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And who's ready to drink? Well, so much for waking up at Jesus 030 to get out here in time. Some cities, some areas make it really hard for you to give them your tourist money, and that's kind of my first impression of the Louisville area. This area is kind of known for bourbon country, and my grandmother, who, if you all watch the video of why I largely did this whole thing, the woman only believed in two fluids, bourbon and holy water. She was Catholic. So I thought, well, this will be great. This is kind of be an honor to her. I'll come out into bourbon country. I'll do one of the tours. Everyone said that, locally that Maker's Mark was really the best. I drive another hour out of my way to get to Maker's Mark. And I had seen, again, on the website that there was a 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. Specialty tour where you get the whole story of the family and the location. I'm like, oh, this is going to be perfect. So I am on the treadmill before the sun comes up to make sure that I get out here in time. And I get here and they're like, oh yeah, we only do that tour like tomorrow, but on the third month of every leap year when the moon is tilted towards Mecca. And I'm like, oh, okay. Thanks, Nancy. It's not quite that dramatic, but like that's kind of how it feels like. Like I'm really trying to experience Louisville and they're making it really hard. So we're just going to have to make the best of it. There's only one tour option today. One way or another, we're going to see how whiskey is made. Whiskey or bourbon, I don't really know the difference because I don't drink. But let's go find out. Like most production tours, you will get scolded if you try to shoot video inside. Somehow, photos and cell phone video never reveal the secrets of what's going on inside. Right. It's cool. I just deployed Falcor, the drone, instead, because you are not the boss of me, bourbon country. Anyway, I learned pretty quickly that all bourbons are whiskeys, but not all whiskeys are bourbons, and don't screw that up while you're in bourbon country. Trust me. By definition, bourbon needs to be American-made and from 51% corn to be called bourbon. There's a lot of information out there about how bourbon is made, and since the tour guide was basically using a Fisher-Price My First Microphone toy, I honestly couldn't tell you because I couldn't hear a damn thing she said. I was mostly curious about why all the distilleries are out in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. Just to get to Maker's Mark, you have to take a single-track road through winding hills of wildflowers, which, even if you don't like bourbon, is worth the drive. I did learn that a limestone bed rests in this part of Kentucky that naturally filters the iron out of the spring water while adding other minerals that flavor the bourbon. Maker's Mark is close to a spring-fed lake, and every drop of Maker's Mark comes from this facility. It was once in shambles after being put out of business during Prohibition. On the top of the hill is the Samuel family home where Bill Samuel Sr. took his family's 170-year-old recipe and set it on fire, along with a set of curtains. He didn't want the bitter product bourbon was known to be. He wanted something exquisite. So he started baking. Yes, baking bread with different mixtures of grains to see which ones worked best together. This way, he wouldn't have the time-consuming process of distilling them. What he came up with was Maker's Mark. Margie, his wife, came up with the classic wax seal. She wanted their bottles to stand out on the shelf. Adding wax to her frying pan at home, she dipped the very first bottle. In the dipping room on the tour, this is still done by hand. First, every glass bottle on the line is inspected for any chips or blemishes, before a lineup of dippers drop them into the red wax. Legend is that every 900th bottle is dunked completely in and sent off as a surprise in a box somewhere in the world. In the gift shop, if you buy a bottle, they let you dip it yourself. Tempting, but since I don't drink and they could not dip my plastic bottle of Coke Zero, I had to pass. Otherwise, you can get practically anything in the gift shop dipped, and people do. This guy is having a brand new hat dipped, thereby rendering it unwearable and unwashable. But I don't think these matters are the concern of men. The business has been passed down for generations. The only advice Bill gave his son was, don't screw up. Naturally, everyone, except me, is really here for the tasting. Whenever you go to a tasting like this, and I think wine is way worse, but people get really elitist. They're like, they tell you to smell it first, which I'm really impatient. So I'm like, can we just take the 5 and let's go. But they tell you to turn it and look at how clear it is. They smell it, and the people around you are like, oh, I detect nodes of boysenberry and chestnut. When the fuck have you smelled a chestnut, John? And who in the group has actually had a boysenberry? Nobody. It's the funniest thing to watch people go through the fake. Sometimes it would be a hilarious video to put vanilla extract and maple extract and stuff that you can buy in the grocery store in one of those glasses, and just let people go to town telling you all the bullshittery that they detect on the bouquet of whatever the hell. It's, I smell it and I'm like, smells like alcohol. The first is Maker's White, the equivalent to moonshine. To me, the experience was akin to sucking on a flamethrower. I don't really remember the rest because no one explained to me that you're supposed to swish it in your mouth and sip lightly. And being a lightweight, after the third sample, I could see noises. I don't know how in the hell my grandmother drank this stuff by the glassful. In her case, a bourbon, or 4 a day, kept the Grim Reaper away because she lived into her 90s. I don't feel that great. I need some fresh air and Jesus after this. So let's head to the city. The theme of not open and fully booked continued in Louisville. I'm over it. So I just took a quick tour of one of the largest historic home districts in the US before hitting the Big 4 Bridge. Pretty much the only thing in Louisville that hasn't been a scheduling headache. It's an old railroad bridge that's been converted into a walking and biking path across the river. In the center, classical music plays, and people from every race, age, and income are outside having fun together in the sunset. This is a fantastic finish after you see Bourbon Country, or really on any day, or in my case, if you're just really needing to walk off the world's most pathetic hangover.